IVM.
Folks, welcome and thank you for joining us on the first episode of the Ideas Project, a limited series by Smallcase. I'm your host Anupam Gupta, and today we are joined by my good friend Ambi Parameswaran. Ambi is a lot of things. He's a veteran ad man, brand strategist, author, and a TEDx speaker. He is the host of the Sponge podcast and co-host of the Last Brand Standing podcast along with me. Ambi also happens to have a keen understanding of brands and is a great historian about the rise and fall of brands in different categories, which is precisely why I have him on this first episode of this podcast, where I want to take a really deep dive into the Tata Group. What kinds of investment opportunities do the Tata Group of companies offer? How have they reached the heights they have? And is Ratan Tata really a dog lover? All of that is coming right up on this episode after this short break.
Have you ever wondered where the business world is headed? How the ways in which we create, market and sell to consumers will evolve? Or if we'll ever go back to wearing pants while working? For answers to all of this and more, tune into Advertising is Dead with me, Varun Dugirala. Every Tuesday, as I talk to entrepreneurs, leaders and change makers from across business, media, marketing and beyond. You can catch all episodes of Advertising is Dead on the IVM Podcast website, app or wherever you get your podcast from.
And welcome back. Ambi, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Anupam, for inviting me onto your show.
Topic that you really like and, a group that you admire, I'm sure.
Absolutely. A group which I have spent time working on. So I have deep emotional connection with the group.
Excellent. Okay, so first question, Ambi, how big is the Tata Group really? Two questions for you here. One is their size, like I just said. And second is, if I had put money in TCS in 2004 when they did the IPO, what would that money be like now?
Okay, so to give you a broad idea and the listeners a broad idea, Tata Group can be traced back to 1868, when Jamshedji Tata set it up. And today there are 30 plus companies operating in 10 verticals across 100 countries, employing something like 800,000 people. 21, the turnover was about $103 billion. And depending on when you pick the date, market cap as of December 21 of all the listed Tata companies was about 314 billion.
Wow, that's pretty big.
It's an amazingly big company, 29 publicly listed company. I mean, that's amazing, right? But you asked a specific question about what would your money have become if you had invested it when TCS did the IPO. Interestingly, I was involved in doing some of the advertising for the IPO for TCS. So it was a proud moment. So TCS shares at the issue price of 850 rupees at IPO in 2004. And this is what, N. Chandrasekharan was quoted in a conference talking about this. So if you had invested in one TCS share at the issue price of 850 rupees in the IPO in 2004, the value, that investment today in a period of 17 years would have become 28,000 rupees.
Wow.
A return of over 3,000% on your investment. Now, if you do a little bit of math, it's about 30% compounded annual return on your investment. I mean, nothing would have given that kind of return. So it's a large group, with diverse interests, and of course the diamond or the crown, the jewel on the crown is really TCS.
Okay. So given this kind of return on TCS stock, at least, would you say that the Tata Group companies are, somewhat safe bet for investors? What do you think about that?
It depends on what you call it. I'm not an investment expert, Anupam. I can only talk of broad trends, right? I mean, any company in any sector gets buffeted by, macroeconomic changes, and Tata Group companies also get affected by the macroeconomic changes. Same thing true with commodity cycles. Companies get hit by commodity cycles. But keeping that aside, Tata Group companies are probably some of the best professionally managed companies in the country. And I would probably say that they probably give better market returns. And barring the commodity cycle or the, various economic, changes which happen, I think I would say they are pretty safe bets to park your money in, so I'm not an expert, but I'm just saying it from my little knowledge.
Yeah. So what are the main ideas or themes you think, Ambi, that have led to the rise of the Tatas? And I think that a lot of it was geared towards this vision of India, and that's really paid off.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all started with, Mr. Jamshedji Tata, right? And today, Tata Group defines its mission as to improve the quality of life of the communities we serve globally through long-term stockholder value creation based on leadership with trust. This is like sounds like a lot, but Jamshedji Tata had a very interesting philosophy. He said, look, it's not as if the company has to, serving the society is not a sub-function of the company. Serving the society is the core function of the company. And therefore, at his time, he thought of doing things which the country needed. At that time, he set up textile mills, right? The early Tata textile mills were set up in Nagpur. He set up power, Tata Power was set up by him. And he had the dream of setting up steel mill, to make steel in India. And the Britishers, people even laughed at him saying, look, I will eat every, gram of steel which is made by this, company. But he went, found the person to, unfortunately, he couldn't complete it, but his sons, Dorab and Ratan Tata, set up the Tata steel plant. And, in fact, he even pledged his jewels, family jewels to pay salaries, right? Stuff like that. So it's the company, believes in what is called trusteeship, which is why 65% of the Tata Sons, which is a holding company, shares are vested with two trusts, the Ratan Tata Trust and the Dorab Tata Trust, who were the two sons of Jamshedji Tata. And therefore, the whole company operates at a slightly different ethos, that serving society is not something you do on your, on your holiday. Serving society is important, which is why they are very good employers. They look after their employees very well, look after their associates very well. And what Jamshedji Tata started was carried forward by, GRD. GRD had his own vision. He set up Air India. He set up, Tata Chemicals set up during his time. Tata Consultancy Services set up during his time. Tata Motors was set up during his time. And then Ratan Tata came and he got the company, into big globalization, acquiring big companies abroad and more professionalization of the group. And he brought in corporate governance, right? I mean, what time, when should you retire? When should, directors retire? When should, so those are things which, Ratan Tata brought in everything into the whole Tata around, the Tata identity was firmed up. And so in a sense, Tata purpose is to serve community. And they serve the community by setting up companies which give products which are of value to customers, which give employment, and which give, I suppose, adequate shareholder returns.
Got it. How have they made sure so many years? You said they started somewhere in the mid to late 1800s. How have they made sure to continue growing? It's a pretty long period.
Yeah, I think one of the key things in the Tata Group, if you go back, is the ability to separate ownership from management. So right from the days of Jamshedji Tata and then later to GRD. GRD was a big delegator. He had, in fact, he probably went to the extreme of creating what they called quote-unquote satraps, who literally ran those companies as if it was their own. But it was separated, right? They were not owners of the company. They were all professional managers. So I think the idea of separating ownership from management has probably has paid off in a very, very good way for Tata Group. Of course, they've done a lot of other things, and we'll talk about it in the later part of this podcast.
Ambi, now I come to the most interesting part of this episode. Tell us about your own experience working on the brand campaigns, ad campaigns for the Tatas.
I worked, as you know, in an agency called FCB Ulka. Became FCB Ulka, and I was there for a long time. And during that period, I got a chance to work with multiple Tata Group companies, including, just to list them out, Tata Finance, Tata Motors, Tata Consultancy Services, Tata Chemicals, Tata Teleservices, Trent Star Bazaar, Tata Corporate, the multiplicity of clients I worked in the Tata Group. And going to Bombay House was almost second nature to him. You just get into the car and, tell my driver Bombay House, and, almost he automatically drops there. And so at one time I remember thinking that, I had a Tata client on every floor of Bombay House. Ground floor was Tata Chemical, first floor was Tata Motors, second floor was someone else, third floor. So fourth floor, of course, was, the group office. I worked across right from around 96 or so. I worked till around 2016. I was there, and I worked across all these multiple companies. Some of these brands we had to pitch against, other competing agencies. I remember I've written about this in one of my books. We got Tata Motors against a very intense pitch against some 13 or 14 agencies.
Wow.
Again, Tata Teleservice also was a pitch against multiple agencies. But overall, large part of my career, I should say, spent on working on the Tata accounts. And And I think I was never treated as an outsider there. And there was never, the threat that you will get fired or we'll pull the account away from you. No, not at all. They make you feel wanted, and they were very professional in their dealings, pay the partners very well, and willing to listen to inputs, right? So great relationship.
So this idea of innovation, something that they have also incorporated within the group. How has that helped them?
Well, Anupam, they take big bets, and for those listeners, they should check out Mr. Ratan Tata's acceptance speech when he got inducted into the Hall of Fame in Detroit, the Auto Hall of Fame in Detroit. And in that speech, it's pretty emotional, but it's a wonderful speech where he says how when he decided to launch Tata Indica, and the whole talk is about this whole taking the Tata Motors into the passenger vehicle space. So, and he also says how he thought of it, and when he launched the car, even his closest friends kind of distanced themselves from him.
Wow.
Saying, this guy is a failure. He'll bring down the whole group, not only Tata Motors. But that defines the core of this company, right? I mean, they take those very big bets. So I think, for example, the fact that they did Tata Indica, and in a sense, I was involved with the launch, and I worked on the brand for many, many years. And it went through its hiccups, and then finally turned it around and made it a success. The fact that they took a big bet in a manufacturing sector, taking on global companies, taking on the might of whatever, the Hyundai and that time Daewoo and, of course, Fiat and Ford, they took them on. And, I sometimes wonder whether, we need more such companies in India which can take on big sectors, right? Like automobiles, making automobiles against competition and manufacturing. So, I think they take bets. They take very big bets, right? But not all of them pan off, right? Tata Teleservices, which also I worked on, didn't work out, didn't pan out the way they would have liked. Of course, there were all kinds of regulatory interferences and changes and all that. And I think, at least speaking as an ad man, I think some of the campaigns we did for Tata Docomo was outstanding. But there were too many other issues, so they had to pull the plug. Look at the other thing, they went and bought Tetley Tea. Tata Tea was a smaller company than Tetley, and they bought Tetley, right? And it turned out to be a good bet. They bought JLR, Jaguar Land Rover. Again, outrageous kind of purchase, right? That panned out very well. And of course, Chorus, again, a very, very big acquisition. Some people say it worked out well. Now that the commodity cycle is changing, probably it's worked out all the well for them. So they have had a judicious balance between organic growth and inorganic growth. Some of them, they acquired good companies. Some they managed to build on their own. And a combination of those two. And I think they are also able to form partnerships, global partnerships with global companies, which I think also help them in the long run.
So what advantages do you think that the Tata Group has as compared to their competitor? Any major advantages that the Tata Group has?
Well, I think one, Tata Group is big, right? So the moment you say Tata Group, you're not talking of small money, right? You're talking of big bets. Talking of very big stability. So one, Tata has deep pockets, and they're willing to stay committed to companies which may even be going through a tough time. And Tata Motors has gone through tough times, right? Including, I think, in 99 or 2000, they had record losses, which the highest loss recorded by any company in India was recorded by Tata Motors. But they managed to stay in the game, and they managed to turn it around. Even Titan, which is celebrated as a phenomenal success, has gone through missteps, right? Their entire European adventure didn't pan out well, and they had a lot of red ink in their balance sheet, but Tata stayed committed. So one is this, getting into a business, staying committed for the long term, right? And they do that. The other thing is the cadre of professional managers they have. I don't know whether you're aware of the TAS system, right? Though some of the best managers in their system come from TAS, right, which is Tata Administrative Services. They recruit from the best business schools, they recruit from the best colleges, and they form a cadre of very, very good, talented managers whom the company can, give scope in terms of moving them into. So, as compared to the competitors, they have a very strong professional image. As a result, they're able to attract lateral talent, but they also have a very strong internal growth culture of people, right? Whether it is, TAS or other lateral hires, etc., etc. So there is a lot of talent in the company which they can deploy. I don't think any other group has that level of bench strength and depth, which the Tata Group has. And that's something which is very difficult to replicate.
So, Ambi, earlier in the episode, you spoke about the different sectors that they're in and the market caps and all that. So, do you think that the Tata Group as such is India's best cross-sector bet?
I think so, undoubtedly. I think, let me just list out, this is from their own website. Let's look at the companies. Right?
Sure.
Tata Consultancy Services, IT. Tata Motors, automotive, commercial vehicles and passenger. Tata Steel, which is steel commodity. Tata Chemical, again, chemicals. Tata Consumer Products, which is, of course, tea, salt, and into pulses, etc. Titan, which is lifestyle, watches, jewelry. Tata Capital, which is, money. Tata Power, Indian Hotel. And then, of course, Tata Communication.
Yep.
Tata Digital. Tata Electronics, 2 companies they've listed. And, of course, Air India.
Yeah.
Right, look at this. Look at the cross-sector diversity of this group, which is, I don't think it's unmatched by any other group in this country and probably anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Final question, Ambi. The future. What do you think the future holds for the Tata Group?
I think, Mr. Tata's move, I think Tata Son's move of inducting Chandra as the CEO was a master move, right? I mean, he's a thorough professional, comes after having run one of India's best companies in an outstanding way. And what he's doing, I think, is to give the group a new direction to fly in. So, of course, Air India has been acquired. That's one, which is part of legacy. Bring back an old legacy brand into the stable. But, the idea of new age company, creating a whole vertical called Tata Digital, where you acquire certain companies which add value, whether it is, 1MG or Big Basket, which have been rolled under that. They've launched a new app, which is Tata New, which is going to offer all different products and services, which from the Tata Group. And recently they also announced that they may open it up to other people to come onto the platform. So they are making big bets on this universal app. And they've got the wherewithal to stay there and build that thing. So I think we should also remember that while they do all this, they don't lose track of the social purpose for which they exist. So the Tata, the trusts are continuing to build hospitals, continuing to do things for the country. And I think this new thrust toward digital is an interesting, play.
Okay.
I'm sure they'll be successful, and I look forward to seeing them becoming very successful in their digital foray with Tata New and integrating Big Basket into that and multiple other such offerings into Tata Digital.
So, if you enjoyed this conversation on the Tata Group, do check out the House of Tata Smallcase, a portfolio of all the Tata Group companies that you can track and invest in with your favorite brokerage account. Link in the episode description and show notes. And that's it, folks. That's a wrap on this episode of the Ideas Project. Hope you enjoyed Ambi and his many words of insight and wisdom. Ambi, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
Thank you, Anupam, for inviting me onto your show. Thank you.
And folks, if you like this episode, do consider subscribing to the podcast and leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. This podcast is powered by Smallcase. We will come back with more insightful conversations to help you achieve a well-rounded investment portfolio. Until then, bye-bye. See you next for a brand new episode of the Ideas Project.
Hello everyone, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On Think Fast, Suchita and Amit Doshi discuss India's creator economy and the Zomato Blinkit merger. On Cyrus Says Ish, Cock and Bull, Cyrus, Ayushi, Shriram, Antariksh and Abbas discuss the arrest of journalist Mohammad Zubair. On All Things Policy, the Takshashila folk decode Bihar's unemployment crisis. On Pulyabazi, Pranay and Saurabh analyze what makes social media powerful. And on Marathi Khidkitun, the Deshmukhs list poems and songs inspired by Twilight. We've got some exciting news for you. IVM Podcasts has just launched its merch, and our first line is out now. Head to the IVM Podcasts website and click on the Shop tab to check out our first collection of t-shirts. Do follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms that you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We would really appreciate if you could spare a few minutes to fill it. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Capgemini, Intel vPro, and Intel. Future Bana wonderful with Intel-powered laptops.
There's a quick survey to fill out on ivmpodcast.com/survey. It lets us know a little bit more about who's listening to us. And you know what? We're going to do a few prizes. So, we'll do a random drawing of maybe 10 people and we'll send you all some swag. Remember, that's ivmpodcast.com/survey where you can fill out the survey.